Assalamu alaikum to all of you. This is Almas Abbasali, and just wanted to confirm that if you can hear us and see us okay, there is a chat window. If you can just type if you can see us okay and hear us okay, just type yes so that we know and that you are able to hear us and see us as well. All right, so it's Junaid. Thank you, Junaid, for confirming. I would like a couple of yeses from the audience. I can see a few attendees are there already. So if you can kindly type yes in the chat section so we are aware that the others can also hear as well. Okay, so thank you, Junaid, Noshad, Aksa, and Nasir and Javed Iqbal. So we have some time left to commence the session because we are scheduled to start at 3 p.m. exactly. So we have few minutes left and we will exactly start at 3. So please stay tuned. Thank you very much. So, Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon to you all. I've already introduced myself and I am joined by Nida Jaffrey. I will be sharing and introducing her profile with you shortly. Let me share the rationale, the objective of these sessions. This is the second session of the webinar series we have started. The first session we did on 25th October. That was on technology and data analytics. So, as you all know, that strategic business leader has been examined for the first time in September 2018 by ACCA. And this paper is introduced mainly to help you get the professional capabilities and skill set developed at the same time for the senior level positions. Now, since students studying the SBL paper is working but may not have the exactly right practical exposure at the time of study, so therefore ACCA has invited the expertise to broaden your horizon on these identified topics and help you appreciate its practical relevance with the practical world. So the today's session is on the topic of innovation, performance excellence, and change management. So in order to guide us and all of you who are studying the SBL paper for December and who are also preparing this paper for March 2020, we have Nida Jaffrey with us. Thank you so much, Nida, for being with us.
Pleasure.
Let me share her profile with you. Nida Jaffrey is the Director, People and Business Advisory, HRSG. Nida Jaffrey is a seasoned human capital consultant and a strategic thinker with 18 years of experience and 15 years of progressive and professional HR consulting experience in the Middle East with some of the top global consulting firms, including Haygro, Ernst & Young, as well as Deloitte and Touche, Middle East. Her areas of expertise include organizational design and transformation, change management, talent management, reward and corporate governance structure solutions. She is a certified GPHR and a certified Hogan assessor, if I have pronounced Hogan correctly.
That's right.
So with this profile, some housekeeping announcements for all of you. If you have any question from Nida to ask us, please write those questions in the chat section and we'll be happy to answer whenever we can. During the session, if you happen to experience any voice difficulty, so normally the advice goes in this way that you rejoin the session. Please note that we will be recording, in fact, we are recording this session and the recording will be shared after this session with all of you. So with this, I would hand over the session to Nida. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Almas. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'd like to just thank the audience as well for giving us the opportunity to present some of the most critical concerns across organizations in today's work world. So as you will be preparing for your strategic business leadership program and studies, I think it's important to understand how organizations are actually looking at the strategic intent of their top management and cascading that down across their different divisions, as well as having the impact at a people level in collaboration across these important facets. So the topics really for today's webinar would be enabling success. How do you enable an organization to be successful? A key question that you ask yourself as you take up a leadership position in an organization and as you move up the ladder. Also, as you become a student of strategic leadership studies. So organizational structuring or operating model design is extremely important in today's work world. You need to understand the intent behind remodeling the organization to align itself with the vision of tomorrow. That said, it is normally what comes to mind is really an organizational structure with reporting lines and positions, boxes, and that's really what you think about first when you think of organizational restructuring. However, organizational restructuring cannot be done in isolation. It has to be an aligned process with your people at the top management level, and your people, that's the board level, and your senior management, as well as your people across the board, all the way down to the non-professional staff. How do you work in collaboration to create an environment which is transparent and which is inclusive? I will give you some examples as we move ahead with the webinar, so as to make you comfortable with what happens in today's work world around organizational structuring and strategy. Talent management is the next facet, which we'll talk about. Talent management and strategy is, again, something that is one of the hot topics of today's work world. You need to ensure that your organizational is well aligned to your people's strategy and the people philosophy of the organization. Now, many companies have evolved so drastically that they have made the work life absolutely seamless for their people. That said, they integrate their work processes with the people's aspirations. So, for example, as we have seen in our own work world, I'll give you examples at HRSG where I work, we have evolved drastically in the past couple of years, where we have brought together businesses and restructured businesses in order to ensure that there is a seamless and a transparent working strategy which is integrated with the core business functions which support each other. And as we move forward with the slides, I will just talk a little bit more about it. So, enabling success, organizational structure and strategy. Organizations look towards improvement for different reasons. One of the main reasons would be to have a positive financial impact on the organization, bottom line results, improvements around the bottom line results, and obviously cost reduction, improved lines of communication and efficiency, and better decision making and clearer authority lines. All of that leads to cost reduction and improved processes. One of the examples that might help you is when we recently at HRSG looked at our different core businesses, such as, so HRSG has been in the market for almost 3 decades, which is 27 years. And we have been focused around helping organizations recruit best talent at the top management, senior management, and non-management levels. So recruiting is a very strong arm of HRSG. Similarly, we've got vendor management services, which is outsourcing manpower, which is really also a very critical and a strong arm of HRSG. We have also got business process outsourcing, which helps organizations with improving their HR processes, and now more so in a digital way. So digital HR is what it's all about. We have 3 other new service lines, comparatively new service lines, which are consulting and insurance, rather 2 of them. What we recently did with HRSG to improve the organizational structuring and create a synergy between departments and functions is that we actually clubbed the 3 service lines which focused around people concerns, mostly recruitment and consulting, which were all people service lines, together under one umbrella called People in Business Advisory. We also decided to include insurance in that particular core business line of ours, or line of business, as we like to call it. And the reason we did that was because we wanted more improved synergy and greater comfort around these sub-service lines or businesses that were working together with each other, but was somehow isolated, right? So we clubbed them together under one umbrella called People and Business Advisory, where whenever we had talent acquisition or recruitment requests, we always helped out from consulting, and we ensured that we carried out assessments. So whenever there was a need, for example, to hire a CEO of an organization or a director or a senior management position or even a mid-management position, we, the recruiting arm, actually reached out to the consulting arm to ask the consulting team to assist them with the assessments, behavioral assessments of these people who they would be interviewing in order to provide a shortlisted pool of candidates to our clients. So we worked in synergy with each other so that we could come up with the best possible solution between recruiting and consulting. Insurance was also clubbed under People and Business Advisory from a business perspective, because that added a lot of value to the kind of clientele sectors that we were working with. Right, so we had, and insurance was comparatively new as well to consulting. So under the umbrella and leadership of somebody who's very seasoned, we brought in a new CEO of People and Business Advisory earlier, and we clubbed all the service lines together. Now that created centralization, that created better decision making, created clearer lines of authority. It was a seamless team that was working together and supporting each other, and really shared one vision towards business growth, resource optimization, and efficiencies. So that's why we reorganized at HRSG. There are many reasons why companies restructure and reorganize themselves. Now, we are living in a world where HR, because we're looking at this from an HR perspective, let's say, where HR is becoming very, very technology driven. There is everything around HR is digital. Now, so you've got data analytics, you've got platforms where you're doing big data, you're creating a lot of information around the diverse groups that are present within an organization. So we have, even at HRSG and at my previous employers, we had a mix of different people from different backgrounds and different age groups and different countries, different mindsets. Now, when we look at such an amalgamation, we're looking at not a complex structure. We're looking at a very interesting structure, because you are trying to create a level of development, retention, and empowerment for your people in order to ensure that you are one of the best employers in your own sector and across. So organizations restructure because they want to implement these new methods of work. They want to implement the new upcoming technology demands. They want to change also the nature of their business, which is they may be product focused today, they would like to be more service focused tomorrow. So they want to sort of cut down these layers of, or these dimensions or walls between departments, between people, and sort of bring them all together so that there is one seamless group working together for a shared vision. So shared vision is one example. Implementing new methods, creating diverse product groups, diverse service groups is another example. Why organizations restructure. They'd also like to restructure because they'd like to change the culture of the organization. Many of the companies that consulting works with are family businesses, and family businesses, whether it's at HRSG or it's at my previous employers, we've all seen consulting, because in consulting, you're actually acting as advisors to diverse companies across different sectors. And so you get to know what's happening in the family business models. And family business models are very, very delicate because they carry with them a certain kind of a culture, a legacy, which it has been passed down generations, not only just to their own blood who's taking over, but to also the management that is really the business owners, the process owners of the organization. So to cut through those levels of culture becomes very important for organizations to restructure and become people-driven, meet the demands of today's work world. One of my recent clients also has a very rich culture in their organization, and they'd like it to become more people-focused, and they'd like to sort of expand the business across the country, perhaps even outside regionally. How do they do that? So the vision is there, but the employee motivation, morale is low. They have internal conflicts. They've got processes which are not working so seamlessly to align with today's demand. What do? They come to consulting, and they need to restructure. So these are really the issues why organizations want to drive that change from a technology perspective, a culture perspective, a people perspective, and obviously to have bottom line results, healthy bottom line results, and improve the financial health of the organization. Now, Microsoft, having said that as another example, as we know, Microsoft, after Windows and Office, wanted to recreate and become innovative, right? So they had these departments, units, which were working with each other, but had a lot of, didn't have the synergy that was required. So they had a new CEO, Satya Nadella, and who came in, wanting to turn the company around. And the reason why I'm giving this example is because Microsoft is a big name. Microsoft created that not just because it had the buy-in of its people or there was thirst for improvement and innovation, but because somebody with a vision came in and said, you know what, we need to bypass these silos. We need to let go of the walls that are created between departments, between units. And we need to work with a shared, empowered goal mindset. And that's what he did. He turned the company around and he created and reinvented the culture. So that example that I was giving you about culture is very important, because when the CEO, the right person at the top, understands that the culture has to be broken in a positive way and has to be changed rather than a positive way, then you have somebody who's going to drive effective business results for the company. Microsoft is still restructuring, it's ongoing, and they're producing iteration of Windows and other products to make our life more seamless, more easier, because we are living in a world where there's consistent change and consistent. But as we all understand, you as students and as professionals would know this better, how quickly you're adapting to technology, how quickly you're adapting to the changing work life and changing student life, because life is now set. These organizations are now restructuring themselves to give back to the environments, give back to the community, and make life in general, whether it's through product development, innovation, or service innovation, to make life much easier for you and I. So that's one of the reasons. HRSG's example is something I've already given you. We have clubbed our 3 service lines of recruitment, consulting, and insurance under an umbrella called People and Business Advisory, which did not exist earlier, but has recently been created about a year and a half back. Again, the idea was to create synergy between these groups, and these groups were required to help each other. And we've seen drastic change in the way people felt, in the way business was carried out, in the way that our clients felt at the end of the day. So they were always happy with the results that were brought together as one team under an able leadership. When we merged these 3 business lines, we saw what resulted in lesser anomalies. We didn't have these outliers within the organization as much as we did earlier. Perhaps communication improved, certainly. We had centralized decision-making, and with centralized decision-making, we had faster response times, because there was somebody who would be able to take the decision and be able to respond back to the team, to the client effectively, and that created more business, better collaboration, and better recognition. Greater impact was created during business development. Like I said, there are teams within the people and business advisory service line of HRSG, who are working in synergy with each other. When one team goes to a client meeting and they get business, they always make sure that they talk about the rest of the businesses that HRSG has, not only under people and business advisory, but they also talk about outsourcing, we also talk about insurance, we talk about BPO and consulting. So we help each other out to ensure that our business improves, and as a result, the company's business growth improves. A singular leadership role obviously makes sure that that particular person in that role is the face of the organization across the division that they're managing. They also are ambassadors for the company. So in order to ensure a healthy outcome, a healthy business outcome at every level, a centralized decision making, a single leadership is important to create that restructure. Collaborative working and strategy. Now within, and this is one of the areas that I just talked about, collaborative working and strategic working. That's because organizations are looking towards external partners who are faster, more efficient, and likely to work with the organizations in an innovative way. They are not working inside that particular organization, but are external advisors. So we'll always have that outlook, which is going to be different and independent from the culture of that organization, will be independent and different from what's happening within the company, and we'll see it from an outside clean lens. So it's going to be very easy for them to give advice. Companies obviously can't be good at everything, right? So there has to be someone who can help them do a particular job in a better way, and therefore have those resources who could advise effectively be deployed on those partnership engagements. And that's how HRSG, if I were to give you our example, that's how we work. We work as advisors, as external advisors to our clients across our different businesses in order to optimize the functioning of the departments and their businesses. So partnership roles are one of the key roles that some of our clients have, actually most of the organizations across the world have embraced lately, and have moved to this, because why would you want to invest internally? It would be more expensive to sort of develop that talent, develop the resource to that level, and just be more time consuming as well. So you have an external partner who could help you restructure the organization, work in collaboration with you. Now, before I move on to the next particular aspect of today's topic, which is enabling success, which is enabling your people, enabling your talent, I'd just like to pause here and ask you if you'd like to, if you have any questions at this particular juncture. So over to all of you. No questions?
All right. So the first question, Nida, we have from Mateen Muhammad Khan. And he's asking, when we talk about process efficiency, the concept of business process refinement or reengineering comes into mind.
Mm-hmm.
His question is the business process management integral part of effective restructuring of an organization?
Right. So that's a very good question, Mateen. I think certainly when you're looking at restructuring organizations, business process reengineering would be an important element to look at. Why? Because when you're restructuring an organization, you are certainly creating a new blueprint for the organization from a structure perspective, but from a process perspective, that certainly has an impact. So you would be reengineering the business processes, which are core businesses and support services of that organization, and you would streamline them in order to support each other and streamline them in ways where you would create cost reduction, you would create quicker time response, you would create synergies between departments. So yes, to answer your question, re-engineering of processes or business process mapping in a drastic way to change the effectiveness of an organization is key. And we did that, to give you an example, we did that in HRSG when we were looking at the HR department in our company. We looked at the policies that we had, and obviously the HR policies and procedures are always very wordy. So just to make sure that when people look at our policy manual, they can understand how the organization has been restructured and how businesses or processes are changing. We created a business process model so as to make sure that the level of activities that are taking place within the restructuring of an organization or a change of an organization, or even if the organization doesn't change and stays the same, but the business processes are mapped in a seamless way so as to support any change that comes tomorrow and so as to support any particular process that is driving effective change. So business process reengineering is definitely an integral part and should be looked at. Many consulting organizations do that. We do that as well. And I have worked with many of my clients in the Middle East where business process reengineering was taken as one of the key ways and key methods to actually restructure or support the restructuring of an operating model for that client.
Thank you, Nida. We have one comment made by Nasir Mahmood, and he writes as cost benefit analysis should be done before restructuring. So, would you like to make any comment on that?
Sure, thank you, Almas. So certainly cost benefit analysis is a very important part of restructuring. Cost benefit analysis, when you're looking at the organization from a resource perspective, it could be financial resourcing, it could be non-financial resourcing, such as process efficiencies or process reengineering. Now, whether you're looking at, I would say cost benefit analysis is really done after the first blueprint of the reorganization happens. So after you have reorganized the company or proposed for a reorganization, the first blueprint, the first draft that comes through would then be your foundation to create a cost and benefit analysis and see what how effective is this organizational restructuring in terms of a financial outlook on the benefit side, reducing costs and improving efficiencies and improving growth for the business, both in the shorter term and the longer term. So it's an absolutely important aspect of restructuring, or would come after the first outlook of the organizational restructuring exercise.
All right, thank you, Nida. We have Hasnain Mahmood, who is asking, how can ethics have impact on restructuring of the organization? And with that, he means every one person have a different opinion on ethics.
Right. So your ethics, the company ethics, and the company, your values that are designed at the top management level and have been absorbed by the people. Feedback has been taken. Your values drive change. Your values are something which really are a reflection of what the organization is about, the culture of the organization. So ethics really is something that has to be taken into consideration or the current values of the organization when you are restructuring. So if the restructuring exercise does not support the values or the ethics of the organization or of the leadership that is driving that change, then there will be no buy-in, from people, or there will be resentment, or there will be hesitation for acceptance of that change. Now, when I say that, we understand that change management or enabling change within an organization comes with a lot of resistance, because people are used to working in a certain way, ethically, driven through the values of the organization. They may be doing things in a certain fashion today. When the reorganization happens, it might change, but it's very important to know and understand that any change in the organization that is recommended must support the values of that organization. But having said that, many companies, and there's a huge family group here who's reached out to us and said that we'd like to have a values rollout. We'd like to change the values of our organization. We'd like to just do a revamp of our values. And for that, they run employee opinion surveys, they run employee engagement surveys, where they're taking in a lot of feedback from companies to understand, how do the people feel about this particular organization? How do the people feel about the values of the organization? Are they in sync with it? There are young people on board who have a very different mindset, who have different expectations from the organization, who see growth in a very different pattern than those who belong to the Generation X, or even those who belong to the baby boomer generation, who probably are on their, are on a level where they might be exiting soon. So you've got millennials on board taking up leadership positions. You've got Gen Z coming through. So you have this huge diverse population across many of the companies where ethics or values of the organization will have to be adapted to the audience that the organization has, the people that the organization has. And that's why many companies are restructuring, because they'd like to change their value model. So yes, that is something which will drive change as well.
Thank you, Nida. We have an interesting question. Abdul Hasib is asking, he goes and asks, like, if we are giving all leadership to a single person, he'll do a mistake that can put the whole business in danger.
Yes, it's a good question. Now, you have organizations of different size and complexity, right? You have organizations which are new businesses, you have organizations which are on their way to growth, and you have organizations which are very mature in their life cycle. So that you've got different sets of organizations wherein the demands for creating leadership model is very important, and how do you create that leadership model is very important as well. So if you have, to answer your question, if you have one person who may be, and if that person is heading the organization, looking after both core businesses and support businesses, it becomes very, it becomes less top heavy, which would be the span of control for that particular person would increase, because he's got so many reportees. And even if he's an owner of a very small business and has a lot of, and has everything under his domain, everyone reporting to him, it could create issues, because then you would have just one mindset driving culture change, one mindset who's creating a certain culture in the organization, and one mindset where people are just reporting to one person without an effective or a healthy balance of different leadership groups around. Because when you have one person driving change, then that becomes more of a dictatorship model, and that becomes very unhealthy for organizations when they're looking at growth in the longer term. So it's something that can be sustained only for a short time. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Nida. We have same student, Abdul Hasib, asking two other questions. Sure. So the first one is that, is it possible for small businesses to restructure, because it would take investment to restructure?
Certainly. So restructuring, Hasib, has many different angles. As we discussed, restructuring can happen from a perspective of technology change. Small businesses may not have the capital required to restructure extensively. When we talk about restructuring could be, as I said, a technology level, could be at a people level, could be at a process level, could be at a culture level, it could be at every level altogether, right? So even small businesses can restructure. A recent example would be one of my clients in the architectural sector is not a very it's not a very large company, but it's a fairly new company which is upcoming and is doing really well. But it's a small business nonetheless. Now they are looking to restructure. They're looking to restructure from a perspective of retrenchment in a way, but a healthy retrenchment. So getting in people who would be more aligned to the vision of the organization, and employees who would gel well with the culture of the organization, and let go of those people who may not be producing or performing well for the past 2 to 3 years consistently. So they could do that small bit of restructuring in terms of getting a healthy workforce on board, and that may not be very, very expensive to do. It could be a wise decision in terms of cost optimization as well. And they're also looking at that from a people-driven, people change perspective, which is what we'll be talking about next in terms of talent management. How do you incentivize your people? What is important? And how do you make sure that their feedback is extremely important to the organization, even though it's a small organization on its way to growth? It's a small business, but that small business has a set of people, and those set of people have to be happy to perform. So it's important for that organization, which is restructuring itself in a way, when it's looking at its processes, its people impact, and its organization as a whole, to take these tiny steps in order to restructure and in order to have an effective business impact on the community, on the business itself, and also on the people who are performing and are part of the organization.
Sunita, would you like to move forward with
Yes, I think let's move forward.
Okay,
if
sure.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for your questions, and we'll take some more questions towards the end. I'd like to talk a little bit about talent management. Now, talent management is something which has always been there as part of an organization's agenda for growth and improvement, and certainly is a strategic driver for many organizations. When we talk about talent management, we're looking at different aspects of talent management. We're looking at talent acquisition, which is hiring the right people. And hiring the right people is not where it stops. It actually means hiring the right people in the right roles. So from an HR perspective, it means managing people. And from a finance perspective, it means that you are making sure that there is cost optimization, yet the cost doesn't become a hindrance to hire the right talent. Because unless and until you don't have the right people in the right roles, you won't have the organization grow or prosper in the direction that the management would like it to. The second aspect of talent management is development, investing in your people. You would invest in your people when you're really passionate about your people. Companies want to develop their individuals. Companies are doing development programs. They're actually doing assessment centers to understand who are those people who need effective investment, not who are those people who need to be just asked to leave or laid off. Who are these people who may be in the last 10 particular level of the organization when assessed may be people who need great improvement, but how do you, just like GE did, they did not lay off people. They actually worked in the bottom half or bottom layer of the organization just to ensure that these are the people that the organization needs to invest in more so that they're developed. Yes, there would be 1% or 2% of people who are just not performing, like I said earlier. And those are people who'd be better off in different roles. So organizations are looking to either create that understanding through investing in people, through job rotation, putting them in different roles where they would be better, sending them on training programs, making them work in collaborative groups, giving them more challenging tasks, though for those who are ready and high potential performers, so as to ensure that the organization does a healthy development in the investment of its people. Talent management, along with the acquisition of talent, development of talent, also ensures that you have a set of people across your organization who are motivated to stay back. Right now, we look at the workforce. You look at millennials. You look at the very young workforce around you. They are ready to, with all respect to those those of you who are very young and who are studying and have professional aspirations, there are a lot of people around the world globally who want to change their jobs too quickly because they feel that their career growth needs to happen very, very fast. Now, that said, obviously there's a certain amount of time that goes into development of people and a certain amount of time that employees need to invest in their own growth before they reach a certain level of leadership. Now, as you move up the ladder, there comes more responsibility. So what we're looking at when we're looking at work with clients from an HRSG's perspective is that we're looking at ensuring that our clients do a healthy talent management exercise. They have the right people in the right roles, starting from the right hiring. They incentivize their individuals through effective incentive programs. It could be short-term incentive plans, it could be longer-term plans, it could be training and development, it could be recognition, merit, appreciation, could be anything, could be motivation, monetary, non-monetary motivation. Now, these are different blends, and companies are working to create those compensation and non-compensation factors within your organization's parameters, which actually affects people to ensure that they are retained effectively. They're motivated, they aspire to reach the organization's goal collectively with their own goal and the department's goals. So talent management is very, very delicate, it's very important, and it is really a platform for companies to say that, this is where strategic growth starts from. You hire the right people, you map the right people to the right roles, you focus on their development, and you ensure that they stay motivated to stay with you. Even the younger workforce would stay with organizations as long as those organizations are ready to invest in them and make them grow effectively. So we'll start about talent management from here. Talent management model in general starts from the steps that I talked about. So acquisition. To give you a flavor, how would you attract talent, right? That's really an organization asking themselves that how do they become the employer of choice for the community, for the people that they're willing to attract, which sectors are they willing to attract from, what professional levels or what professional domains are they willing to attract from? Is it just local within Pakistan or is it outside Pakistan they're willing to attract talent? And if they're willing to do that globally, then do they have the right platforms to develop those people? Because then the expectations would be different. That is everything about retention. How do you retain talent? How do you ensure that they are well engaged with the organization and with their peers, as well as with the communities, the customers, the clients, the internal, external stakeholders that they are working with? Right? So all of this is interlinked. Your right deployment retention would mean that you're getting the most value out of your talent. That means that an organization is investing in the learning and development of its people, that it's ensuring that people are being managed effectively, their performance is managed effectively. And therefore, that sort of creates a cycle for you to ensure that you have a healthy set of people working for you and a healthy set of alumni. Those who've actually left you leave on a good note, meaning that they will be ambassadors of your organization even tomorrow. So it is really a cycle of growth for the organization and a cycle of growth for the people who are working for the company. What does effective talent management look like? Effective talent management is everything to do with what we've just talked about. Effective acquisition, effective development, effective retention, and effective growth for the people and for the organization in order to ensure sustained impact on the organization and its people. Talent management must also be streamlined to ensure that the people are advancing with the technological changes in the environment. And if I talk about HR, digital HR is on the rise to ensure that it becomes that single source of information of growth for companies, where it empowers organizations and it empowers its people to ensure that the best talent is deployed and the best talent is retained. How does finance play a role here? For finance professionals, it's very important for finance to work alongside HR, to work alongside businesses, because finance supports the recruitment strategy. Finance supports the cost optimization strategy as a key result area or key performance indicator area that organizations are looking to work on. So while finance ensures that there is a healthy financial, and the balance sheet looks fine, it also needs to partner with HR to ensure that the right people are deployed and are sustained in the organization strategically from a financial impact perspective, even it means investing a little bit more on them. So both finance and HR are support partners to the core businesses of the organization to ensure a healthy talent management exists within companies. A study from IBM has found that most of the effective talent management had higher percentages of financial outperformers than groups of similar sized companies with less effective talent management, because you need to ensure that you may be giving them better incentives like I talked about, but you would be retaining then the best talent. Now, we've talked about, I also like to address the demographics of organizations within different global platforms. You've got people, like I said, who are Generation X employees, you've got baby boomers, and you've got millennials. You've got men and women, and the rise of women across organizations, and the rise of women in leadership roles. You've got white-collared workers and blue-collared workers. You've got union staff members who would work in a certain fashion, who could also become a challenge for many of the organizations when they bring about organizational restructuring, because they would just resist the organization restructuring. And that's where we see a lot of difficulties for organizations to ensure that a healthy change takes place, that a healthy yet an effective, balanced change management, strategic leadership management takes place. So it's a very delicate line between how you recommend change and how you deploy change, right? Now, millennials and baby boomers and Generation X employees have different needs. How do you manage those different needs along, even at the management and non-management union labor level? How do you manage that? How do you create and ensure that there is flexibility to have an effective talent management pipeline? Today's work world has changed drastically. We are looking at ways to make life easier for people. Social media platforms are created just for that. There are advantages and disadvantages, as we all may argue, about social media. But the aim has been to create a more, to create a seamless, a borderless world where communication becomes easier. Similarly, when you're talking about different technological changes, you're talking about different age groups coming with these technological gears, where they work better in a far advanced, far technologically advanced environment. An organization, when it looks towards organizing or reorganizing, or even when it looks towards sustaining an effective talent pipeline, needs to ensure that a healthy outlook and a healthy feedback is achieved from the people who matter the most. And these people are the resources, are the human capital of the organization. So it's important to take their feedback, it's important to work with them, but it's also important to work within a certain structured boundary that has been set by the organization, to the vision of the organization. So everything cannot be let loose, but everything has to have a very balanced, a very hybrid, a very healthy and a harmonious outlook, so that organizations drive change, but drive change through ensuring that the values and ethics of the organization don't get compromised. The key challenges in talent management is also something that we should understand and be aware of today. Talent identification in organizations allows for human biases. Certainly, organizations are not free of human biases, right? There are companies who are working effectively, but would work so with a certain discretion towards systems, towards people, towards their frameworks. Many companies confuse training and development and go for the wrong employee development programs. Many of these organizations understand that special skill development and requirement is a healthy outlook, and thus invest financially in a very healthy way in the talent pipeline. So from a strategic business leadership perspective, for you to understand how intricately talent management has to be developed and maintained, yet ensuring financial impact for organizations, positive financial impact, is key, because you cannot ensure that you provide financial strategic advice to companies at a CFO level or a non-management level without ensuring that your talent is covered, your talent is well managed, your organization is well structured. So this is very, very important. I would also like to close this particular discussion with one of the Big Four's talent strategy, where they use a deploy, develop, and connect model. And they do that to ensure that they enable their employees in a way that they are effectively deployed, are capable enough to create that long-lasting commitment and impact on the organization. So the 2D and 1C model, which is a develop, deploy, connect model, is very, very important and ensures that organizations have the capability required to create the business goals and have the lasting impact. Rather, it means that they provide the employees with experiences that they need to perform to the full extent of their capabilities, and you align, when you're talking about deployment of resources and development of resources, you are aligning the right talent in the right place at the right time and equipping them, connecting them with the right resources to ensure that they are performing above and beyond their capacity and become stars of the organization. So the deploy, develop, and connect model is a very important model when we talk about talent management. That's really one of the key drivers of change, one of the key drivers of organizational change and organizational structure deployment. It's something that we talked about in the beginning. It's something that is driving change. So we cannot isolate the people aspect of ensuring people aspect from the change management aspect of an organizational restructuring exercise. So talent management goes hand in hand with organizational restructuring, and all of these facets that we've talked about are actually the arms and the legs of change management. It's just an effective way to drive business growth and change. And I really hope that this has been a very important it a very useful session for you. I'd like to open the floor now to any questions that you might have going forward.
Thank you, Nida. So far it's going fascinating. We have few questions have come up. Abdul Hasib is asking what age generation we should prefer for management positions, and I hope what he's trying to write for departments, because young people are eager and have passion, but old ones have experience and better decision making abilities. So perhaps he's trying to ask that what balance should be stricken in terms of hiring.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, Lucy, because we are looking at organizations actually facing this particular concern. So when I go back to the develop, deploy, and connect model, I'd like to just dwell a little bit on that further with you in the audience. See, we're looking at a young force, like I said, who's very passionate to grow, has a lot of energy, mashallah, to grow forward, but yet has not reached the maturity of being able to sustain a leadership position without the lack of experience in their particular domain, right? So we know there is no shortcut to experience, yet we are also seeing a lot of young people advancing to managerial positions, to higher leadership positions in a shorter span of time. And that's happening because today's work world has changed so much that organizations are equipping they're equipping people with the right resources, whether it is right technological resources, any other corporate resources for their development plan in order to ensure that they are on a fast track and they reach those positions. But those people who reach leadership positions in a faster time span are the stars of the organization as well. And some of them just need a little bit more time to ensure that they go through the effective ladder. And because that is the way every organization is different. You look at it, a media company and the way it operates, it has very young people leading leadership positions at a younger age. That's because the dynamics of the media industry is very, very different. When you look at the hospitality sector, it's completely different. You look at the oil and gas sector, it's very structured and mature. You have a certain level and a certain career growth which you cannot bypass till you reach leadership position. So if you have the right sort of resources to develop yourself and the organization commits to those resources, if you have the right energy to ensure self-development, if you have the time on your hands to develop yourself, then yes, certainly there is no stopping a young person from reaching leadership. But I would still say that there has to be an effective and a balanced way to ensure that you reach a managerial position in order to be effective. Why? Because you will tomorrow be a manager of people, right? You'll be a manager of change. And only when you experience and go through a set of changes in your own profession will you be able to sustain that position longer. That's for you or for any other young person.
Thank you, Nida. We have Mateen Mohammed Khan, who is asking, what is the role of effective talent management to overcome change resistance that may have been encountered while restructuring the business or while carrying out new projects like ERP implementation?
Sorry, could I take that again? What is
Sure. What is the role of effective talent management to overcome change resistance that may be encountered while restructuring the business or while carrying out new projects? And he mentions like ERP project implementation. So as an ERP consultant, he has experienced the resistance from users of old age employees, the one who are not very well versed with the use of technology. Very good question.
Very, very good question. You have a lot of baby boomers and some Gen X people who would resist change when it comes to technology and the implementation of ERP. They're so used to working on a certain model for so long that they're in their comfort zone and would not want to come out of the comfort zone. So how do you make sure that talent management plays an effective role in that? Very good question. So talent management would really, for these kind of professionals, where they would really be the barriers to change, you would ensure a very, very careful communication plan to start with. Communication plan from a talent management and a change management perspective. Communication plan is a very integral part of change management engagements, and we do that for many clients. So from experience, if I give you examples, there are so many organizations where we have come across different generations resisting change to something as advanced as changing the platform that they work on technologically to make sure that faster decision making takes place, etc., because they're so used to it. Now, what organizations do is they work through a communication plan to these people and make sure that they make them feel comfortable with accepting change. How would they do that? They would empower them. They would make them feel comfortable that you changing this particular role, moving from somebody who's been doing a set of duties in a set of fashion for a long time, does not mean that your empowerment is taken away from you. Rather, it is a partner to equip you to perform better. So A would be to look at communication, B would be to ensure that you empower them. What is it in it for them to ensure that they feel comfortable in their roles? And really train them to ensure that the ERP implementation takes place effectively. If they still resist that ERP implementation, then certainly there has to be, again, going back to the develop, deploy, connect model, and ensure that you make sure that their performance is aligned to the performance of the new initiative that's taken by the organization, the ERP in this case. Their performance objectives are linked to that. When they see that they're actually creating a positive impact on the organization at the end of the day, and they're actually they're actually a team, they're one team with the ERP team, then they would be able to accept that change in a better way. So I think really making them empowered, creating change enablers for them, and making them feel comfortable would be important, because you can't let go of them and you can't forcefully implement ERP, but you have to make sure that you give them a sense of what is it in it for them that makes their life easier and has a better business impact for those managers at the end of the day. I hope that answers your question.
Hope so. Thank you, Nida. We have Nasir Mahmood who's asking, is talent management related to HR only, or other functions in the organization as well?
Right. So I think every function of the organization should embrace talent management, because when you're looking at managers of departments or senior leaders of departments or even people, they all need to ensure that they are part of developing their own self, which is part of talent management, developing their people, which is also part of developing talent management, ensuring that you have the right people on board. So an effective acquisition strategy for their department. So it's not specific to HR. HR, in fact, is an enabler, is a strategic partner with the organizations, with the people, with the support service departments, with the core business departments, and it works in harmony to ensure that the department managers can effectively hire the right people, develop the right people, motivate the right people, and retain the right people. So that's what talent management is. It's part of every department.
Thank you, Nida. We have another good question from Hassan Mahmood, who is asking, can you please describe what is boundaryless structure and how it can impact on talent management.
Boundaryless structure. Would you mean organizations who are working across borders? Could I ask you to just rephrase that question again, if okay?
Yeah, so Hassan, if you can just add in the chat, if you mean by boundaryless structure is the boundaryless management of the staff, talent management you are talking about, or
what does boundaryless
what
mean?
is boundaryless you mean by that? So if you can just add on to that. So we move to the other question. By the time, Hassan, you add on to your question, we have Abdul Hasib Ahmed who is asking, is it effective for a business if founder of that business means the sponsor himself and participate in the business or business like other employees? So this is not very clear question. Let me read it again, Nida.
Sure.
Is it effective for a business if the founder of that business means that he is the sponsor himself and participate in the management like the other employees in the organization?
So certainly the owner of the business, the founder of the business is an employee of the organization itself. Certainly the person is seen as the role model for many people in the organization because that particular person is the founder, has created an organization, is creating literally a culture within an organization. It is okay for the person to be considered a team member of many of the departments and many of the committees in the organization, such as perhaps the tender committee, the HR committee or the management committee at times. Really depends upon how big or small is the organization and where is the organization in terms of its growth cycle, in its life cycle. Is it at an introductory level where it's just been an entrant in the market, or is it in its growth phase? Is it in its maturity phase, or is it in its decline phase where the owner founder takes more ownership and ensures that a healthy a healthy contribution is important? That said, one owner founder of the business or a sponsor cannot drive the business alone. This is something that we talked about earlier as well, will not be healthy for the organization. He or she must bring in a blend of different expertise across the organization at leadership levels, must create a board to ensure there is positive impact at the management level, and the decision making is streamlined, is effective, and the business growth is seamless. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Nida. We have Hasnan Mahmood come back, and he has added some words. But I'm not sure if it will make further complete sense for you to answer. He mentions complex businesses concept, B2B relations for maximization of wealth and objectives. So if he means by that boundaryless structure.
Could you repeat that? B2B businesses for?
B2B businesses for B2B relations, for
sorry.
maximization of wealth and objectives.
This question it's not very clear. It could be a little broader perhaps. And is this related to the boundaryless question? I'm not sure. But if you are trying to ask whether B2B relations are important, yes, certainly they are, because they are a contributor to the overall business growth for the organization, for the sustainability of the organization. And at the end of the day, maximization of wealth, as you've called it. But I would still request for you to be slightly more clear about what you're trying to ask. Could we go to the next question?
Yeah, we have one question in the first Q&A section left,
sure,
which I will pick up, which is asked by Abdul Hasib Ahmed. can the businesses restructure their production department who produce solid products, like they don't sell services but they produce products? So is the restructuring good for such businesses?
To restructure their departments which are manufacturing products but not services, right?
Yes.
Certainly. I mean, we looked at Microsoft and we saw the example of Microsoft where they had to create, let go of the walls between the product development teams that they were working. Google probably has done the same thing. You are looking at organizations, when you're looking at, for example, an organization which manufactures purely, it just manufactures products and has nothing to do with service provisions, then although service would be part of the sales and the service part of the organization in relation to those products, you would pick up a certain function or domain which is just product development or manufacturing, and you would look at the entire manufacturing supply chain, the entire business model around manufacturing supply chain, ensure that the quality department, the supply chain department, the procurement department, the manufacturing department all work in synergy with each other. There was a large family group that we assisted with lately, where this was, product manufacturing was one of their core businesses, and that was re-engineered. The department was re-engineered, meaning it was restructured, and it was restructured in a way so as to ensure greater product development, create synergies between departments of supply chain, procurement, quality assurance, and at the end of the day, maximization in terms of the customer journey, the customer impact. So certainly you have options, and you must, when you're looking at organizations which are just product focused, product delivery focused, you must ensure that they are restructured if required, if they're not doing very well, let's say restructured in a way so as to enable change across the way they design their products, deliver their products, sell their products, have follow-ups, the way they work with the different functions, not only within supply chain, procurement, quality assurance, manufacturing itself, but also the service department, the follow-up department, and the other departments within the organization. So certainly there is always room for that particular department to change and re-strategize itself.
Right. So it's already 4:11 at the moment, and we can take one or two questions.
Let's take, yes, two more questions.
So Hasnan Mahmood has come back, and he's mentioned the one who's asking about the boundaryless structure. So he further added that just for instance, as we know, banks offer many services apart from its core activities, such as accepting utility bills, providing car insurances, etc. Now, how talent management can have impact on these additional non-core activities, which perhaps create wealth?
Sorry, I think from what I understand, Hasnain, let me just rephrase. So you're trying to understand how financial institutions, banks, for example, who do a lot of lending, borrowing, for example, would have an effective talent management structure deployed. Now, if I have that correctly understood, financial institutions also are one of the main sectors where they're looking to reorganize the way they do work. So talent management in terms of somebody who's working in a loan department versus anyone else in the bank needs to have an effective talent management strategy on which talent is deployed, developed, and connected. Now, talent management is not only for certain individuals or certain functions and not for others. Talent management is something which is deployed across the organization. Talent management is part of the business strategy. So when you're looking at leadership business strategy or strategic business leadership, you are actually ensuring that your talent management understanding is very, very concrete. Means that ensuring the right people in the right place, ensuring they're developed, ensuring they are motivated and they're retained, and that you invest in them is a part of every organization strategy, whether they're in the finance sector or the non-finance sector, whether it's somebody working in the loan department, somebody working in the credit department, the commercial finance department, investment department, regardless of any department in the financial or the non-financial sector, talent management is an aspect which is part of the strategy of every organization.
Thank you, Nida. And one question we can take and then we can conclude the session. Abdul Hasib is asking, when a business is being settled,
Sure.
should we or will we restructure it? Because he feels that it can reduce the effectiveness. What do you think on that?
Is being settled meaning?
If the business is being settled, right? I think he means if the business is doing okay.
Right.
So if the restructuring is done, so will it reduce the effectiveness of the business?
Okay, that's a good question. So not all organizations need to restructure. Some companies are doing phenomenally well, just the way they are. So certainly restructuring can happen at a minuscule level, can happen at a very small level. A small change in terms of, for example, ERP that one of the gentlemen talked about, the implementation of ERP, that's a small change, that's a restructuring from a technological perspective. So it doesn't have to be companies who need to drastically change. Yes, they are definitely the go-getters for change, but you are looking at organizations who are doing fairly well and don't need any restructuring at an operating model level, meaning that their board is being governed properly, the company is being governed by the board properly, rather the top management, senior management are fairly equipped with the way they're managing the business, the people, the teams across the businesses are deployed well, motivated well. That said, that doesn't mean that the company which is doing extremely well is on the right path, doesn't need any restructuring. You could have certain pockets of change which could be required across the organization. The only way you will find out if an organization is A, in need of change, and B, ready for change, is when you do sort of an employee culture, an organizational culture audit or an employee engagement survey, when you try to find out from the people who are part of the organization whether or not change is required. And if change is required or restructuring is required, in what aspect is it required? At what level is it required? Is it at the culture level? As deep as that? Is it at a people level? Is it at just a process level? Is it just a technological level? So it really depends. And you can only come to the right answer once you take feedback from the people. And I do hope that answers your question.
That's great, Nida. And this brings us to the closure of our today's webinar. So I thank all the students out there and affiliates who are still with us and attending this session. And I do sincerely hope that you have found this helpful session for your study and for overall your working where you are wherever you are work. So you can always embed this understanding. So with that, those who are going to attempt the December exams, I wish you all the good, best of luck for your exam performance. And Nida, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Pleasure, Almas, and thank you to everyone here who's participated.
Thank you very much for your time and very good advice to the students and a rich experience which you have shared. Students, which I do believe that will go a long way. So thank you very much once again. And we'll meet you all for the third session, which will be sent to you as an announcement later on. Thank you very much.
All the best.